In the Time of the Butterflies by Julia Alvarez, Epilogue, Part B, and Postscript. The losses. I can count them up like the coroner gave us, like the list the coroner gave us, taped to the box of things that have been found on their persons or retrieved from the wreck. The silliest things, but they gave me some comfort. I would say them like a catechism, like the girls used to tease and recite the commandments of their house arrest. 1 pink powder puff, 1 pair of red high-heeled shoes, the 2-inch heel from a cream-colored shoe. Jaimito went away for a time to New York. Our harvest had failed again, and it looked as if we were going to lose our lands if we didn't get some cash quick. So we got work in a factoria, and every month he sent home money. I am ashamed after what came to pass to say so, but it was gringo dollars that saved our farm from going under. And when he came back, he was a different man. Rather, he was more who he was. I had become more who I was, too, locked up, as I said, with Mama and the children my only company, and so, though we lived under the same roof until after Mama died, to spare her another sadness, we had already started our separate lives. 1 screwdriver, 1 brown leather purse, 1 red patent leather purse with straps missing, 1 pair of yellow nylon underwear, 1 pocket mirror, 4 lottery tickets. We scattered as a family, the men and later the children, going their separate ways. First Manolo, dead within 3 years of Minerva, then Pedrito. He'd gotten his lands back, but prison and his losses had changed him. He was restless, couldn't settle down to the old life. He remarried a young girl, and the new woman turned him around, or so Mama thought. He came by a lot less, and then hardly at all. How all of that, beginning with a young girl, would have hurt poor Patria. And Leandro. While Manolo was alive, Leandro was by his side day and night. But when Manolo took off to the mountains, Leandro stayed home. Maybe he sensed a trap. Maybe Manolo had become too radical for Leandro. I don't know. After Manolo died, Leandro got out of politics, became a big builder in the capital. Sometimes, when we're driving through the capital, Jacqueline points out one impressive building or another and says, "Papa built that." She is less ready to talk about the second wife, the new, engrossing family, stepbrothers, and sisters the age of her own little one. 1 receipt from Malgallo, 1 missile held together with a rubber band, 1 man's wallet, 56 centavos in the pocket, 7 rings, these plain gold bands, 1 gold with the small diamond stone, 1 gold with an opal and 4 pearls, 1 man's ring with a garnet and an eagle's insignia, and 1 silver initial ring, 1 scapular of Our Lady of Sorrows, 1 St. Christopher's medal. Mama hung on 20 years. Every day I wasn't staying over. I visited her first thing in the morning, and always with an orchid from my garden for the girls. We raised the children between us. Manu and Manolito and Raulito she kept. Jacqueline and Nelson and Norris were with me. Don't ask me why we divided them that way. We didn't, really. They would wander from house to house. They had their seasons, but I'm talking about where they most often slept. What a time Mama had with those teenage granddaughters. She wanted them locked up like nuns in a convent. She was always so afraid, and Manu certainly kept her, and me, in worries. She took off, a young 16-year-old girl by herself to study in Canada. Then it was Cuba for several years. Ah, Dios. We pinned enough virgencitas and azabaches and hung enough scapulars around that girl's neck to charm away the men who were always wanting to get their hands on that young beauty. I remember Manu telling me about the first time she and Doroteo got involved, what she called it. I imagined, of course, the bedside scene behind the curtain of that euphemism. He stood with his hands under his arms as if he was going to give in to her charms. Finally, she said, "Doroteo, what's wrong?" And Doroteo said, "I feel like I'd be desecrating the flag." He had a point there. Imagine the daughter of 2 national heroes. All I said to Manu was, "I like that young man." "But not Mama. Be smart, like your mother," she kept saying. "Study and marry when you're older." and all I could think of was the hard time Mama had given Minerva when she had done just that. Poor Mama, living to see the end of so many things, including her own ideas. 20 years, like I said, she hung on. She was waiting until her granddaughters were past the dangerous stretch of their teen years before she left them to fend for themselves. And then 14 years ago, this last January, I came into her bedroom one morning, and she was lying with her hands at her waist, holding her rosary, quiet, as if she were praying. I checked to make sure she was gone. It was strange how this did not seem a real death, so unlike the others, quiet, without rage or violence. I put the orchid I had brought the girls in her hands. I knew that, unless my destiny was truly accursed and I survived my children, this was the last big loss I would have to suffer. There would be no one between me and the dark passage ahead. I was next. The complete list of losses. There they are. And it helps, I found, if I can count them off, so to speak. And sometimes when I'm doing that, I think, maybe these aren't losses. Maybe that's a wrong way to think of them. The men, the children, me, we went our own ways. We became ourselves, just that. And maybe that is what it means to be a free people. And I should be glad? Not long ago, I met Leo at a reception in honor of the girls. Despite what Manu thinks, I don't like these things, but I always make myself go. Only if I know he will be there, I won't go. I mean, our current president, who was the puppet president the day the girls were killed, they. Acquaintances will sometimes try to convince me. Put that behind you, he's an old blind man now. He was blind when he could see, I'll snap. Oh, but the blood burns just thinking of shaking that spotted hand. But most things I go to. For the girls, I always tell myself. Sometimes I allow myself a shot of rum before climbing in the car. Not enough to scent the slightest scandal, just a little thunder in the heart. People will be asking things, well-meaning but nevertheless poking their fingers where it still hurts. People who kept their mouths shut when a little peep from everyone would have been a chorus the world couldn't have ignored. People who once were friends of the devil. Everyone got amnesty by telling on everyone else until we were all one big rotten family of cowards. So I allow myself my shot of rum. All these things, I always try to position myself near the door so I can leave early. And there I was about to slip away when an older man approached me. On his arm was a handsome woman with an open, friendly face. This old fool is no fool, I'm thinking. He has got himself a young nurse wife for his old age. I put out my hand, just a reception line habit, I guess, and this man reaches out with both hands and claps mine. Dede, caramba! Don't you know who I am? He holds on tight, and the young woman is beaming beside him. I look again. Dios santo, Leo! And suddenly I have to sit down. The wife gets us both drinks and leaves us alone. We catch up, back and forth, my children, his children, the insurance business, his practice in the capital, the old house I still live in, his new house near the old presidential palace. Slowly we are working our ways toward the treacherous past, the horrible crime, the waste of young lives, the throbbing heart of the wound. Aye, Leo, I say, when we get to that part. And bless his heart, he takes my hands and says, The nightmare is over, Dede. Look at what the girls have done. He gestures expansively. He means the free elections, bad presidents now put in power properly, not by army tanks. He means our country beginning to prosper, free zones going up everywhere, the coast a clutter of clubs and resorts. We are now the playground of the Caribbean, who were once its killing fields. The cemetery is beginning to flower. Aye, Leo, I say it again. I follow his gaze around the room. Most of the guests here are young, the boy businessmen and with computerized watches and walkie-talkies in their wives' purses to summon the chauffeur from the car. Their glamorous young wives with degrees they do not need, the scent of perfume, the tinkle of keys to things they own. Oh yes, I hear one of the women say, we spent a revolution here, or we spent a revolution there. I can see them glancing at us, the two old ones, how sweet they look under the painting of Bido. To them, we are characters in a sad story about a past that is over. All the way home, I'm trembling. I'm not sure why. It comes to me slowly as I head north through the dark countryside. The only lights are up in the mountains, where the prosperous young are building their getaway houses, and of course, in the sky, all the splurged wattage of the stars. Leah was right. The nightmare is over. We are free at last. But the thing is making me tremble that I do not want to say out loud, and I'll say it once, and only, and it's done. Was it for this, the sacrifice of the butterflies? Mama Dede, where are you? Manu must be off the phone. Her voice has that exasperated edge our children get when we dare wander from their lives. Why aren't you where I left you? Mama Dede! I stop in the dark depths of the garden as if I've been caught about to do something wrong. I turn around. I see the house as I saw it once or twice as a child. The roof with its fairy tale peak, the veranda running along three sides, the windows lighted up, glowing with the lived life. A place of abundance, a magic place of memory and desire. And quickly I head back, a moth attracted to that marvelous light. I tuck her in bed and turn off her light and stay a while and talk in the dark. She tells me all the news of what Camilla did today, or Doroteo's businesses, of their plans to build a house up north in those beautiful mountains. I'm glad it's dark, so she cannot see my face when she says this. Up north in those beautiful mountains where both your mother and father were murdered. But all this is a sign of my success, isn't it? She's not haunted, full of hate. She claims it, this beautiful country with its beautiful mountains and splendid beaches. All the copy we read in the tourist brochures. We make our plans for tomorrow. We'll go on a little outing to Santiago where I'll help her pick up some fabrics at El Gallo. They're having a big sale before they close the old doors and open under new management. A chain of El Gallos is going up all over the island with attendants in rooster red uniforms and registers that announce how much you're spending. Then we'll go to the museum where Manu can get some cuttings from Tono for the atrium in her apartment. Maybe Jaime David can have lunch with us. The big important senator from Salcedo better have time for her, Manu warns me. Fela's name comes up. Mama Dede, what do you think it means that the girls might finally be at rest? That is not a good question for going to bed, I think. Like bringing up a divorce or a personal problem on a postcard, so I give her the brief, easy answer. That we can let them go, I suppose. Thank God. She is so tired and does not push me to say more. Some nights when I cannot sleep, I lie in bed and play the game Minerva taught me, going back in my memory to this or that happy moment. But I've been doing that all afternoon, so tonight I start thinking of what lies ahead instead. Specifically, the prize trip I've as good as won again this year. The boss has been dropping hints. You know, Dede, the tourist brochures are right. We have a beautiful paradise right here. There's no need to travel far to have a good time. Trying to get by cheap this year. But if I've won the prize trip again, I'm going to push for what I want. I'm going to say, I want to go to Canada to see the leaves. The leaves? I can just see the boss making his professional face of polite shock. It's the one he uses on all the tutumpotes when they come in wanting to buy the cheaper policies. Surely your life is worth a lot more, Don Fulano. Yes, I'll say leaves. I want to see the leaves. But I'm not going to tell him why. The Canadian man I met in Barcelona on last year's prize trip told me about how they turn red and gold. He took my hand in his, and as if it were a leaf, spreading out the fingers. He pointed out this and that line in my palm. Sugar concentrates in the veins. I felt my resolve to keep my distance melting down like the sugar in those leaves. My face, I knew, was burning. It is the sweetness in them that makes them burn, he said, looking me in the eye, then smiling. He knew an adequate Spanish, good enough for what he had to say, but I was too scared yet to walk into my life that bold way. When he finished the demonstration, I took back my hand. But already in my memory it has happened, and I am standing under those blazing trees, flamboyant in bloom in my imagination, not having seen those sugar maples he spoke of. He is snapping a picture for me to bring back to the children to prove that it happens. Yes, even to their old Mama Dede. It is the sweetness in them that makes them burn. Usually at night I hear them just as I'm falling asleep. Sometimes I lie at the very brink of forgetfulness, waiting as if their arrival is my signal that I can fall asleep. The settling of the wood floors, the wind astir in the jasmine, the deep released fragrance of the earth, the crow of an insomniac rooster. Their soft spirit footsteps so vague I can mistake them for my own breathing. Their different treads, as if even as spirits they retain their personalities. Patria's sure and measured step, Minerva's quicksilver impatience, Mate's playful little skip. They linger and loiter over things. Tonight, no doubt, Minerva will sit a long while by her menu and absorb the music of her breathing. Some nights I'll be worrying about something and I'll stay up past their approaching, and I'll hear something else, an eerie, hair-raising creaking of riding boots, a crop striking leather, a peremptory footstep that makes me shake myself awake and turn on lights all over the house, the only sure way to send the evil thing packing. But tonight it is quieter than I can remember. Concentrate, Dede, I say. My hand worries with the absence on my left side, a habitual gesture now. My pledge of allegiance, I call it, to all that is missing. Under my fingers, my heart is beating like a moth wild in a lampshade. Dede, concentrate. But all I hear is my own breathing and the blessed silence of those cool, clear nights under the anacuita tree before anyone breathes a word of the future. And I see them all there in my memory, as still as statues, Mama and Papa, Minerva and Mate and Patria, and I'm thinking something is missing now, and I count them all twice before I realize it's me, Dede, it's me, the one who survived to tell this story. A postscript. On August 6, 1960, my family arrived in New York City, exiles from the tyranny of Trujillo. My father had participated in an underground plot that was cracked by the SIM, Trujillo's famous secret police. At the notorious torture chamber of La 40, it was just a matter of time before those who were captured gave out the names of other members. Almost 4 months after our escape, 3 sisters who had been members of that underground were murdered on their way home on a lonely mountain road. They had been to visit their jailed husbands, who had purposely been transferred to a distant prison so that the women would be forced to make this perilous journey. A 4th sister, who did not make the trip that day, survived. When as a young girl I heard about the, quote, accident, unquote, I could not get the Miraballs out of my mind. On my frequent trips back to the Dominican Republic, I sought out whatever information I could about these brave and beautiful sisters who had done what few men, and only a handful of women, had been willing to do. During that terrifying 31-year regime, any hint of disagreement ultimately resulted in the death for the dissenter and often the members of his or her family. Yet the Miraballs had risked their lives. I kept asking myself, what gave them that special courage? It was to understand the question that I began this story. But as happens with any story, the characters took over beyond polemics and facts. They became real to my imagination. I began to invent them. And so it is that what you find in these pages are not the Mirabal sisters of fact, or even the Mirabal sisters of legend. The actual sisters I never knew, nor did I have access to enough information or the talents and inclinations of a biographer to be able to adequately record them. As for the sisters of legend, wrapped in superlatives and ascended into myth, they were finally also inaccessible to me. I realized, too, that such deification was dangerous, the same God-making impulse that had created our tyrant. And ironically, by making them myth, we lost the Miraballs once more, dismissing the challenge of their courage as impossible for us, ordinary men and women. So what you will find here are the Miraballs of my creation, made up, but, I hope, true to the spirit of the real Miraballs. In addition, though I had researched the facts of the regime, the events pertaining to Trujillo's 31 despotism, I sometimes took liberties by changing dates, by reconstructing events, and by collapsing characters or incidents. For I wanted to immerse my readers in an epoch in the life of the Dominican Republic that I believe can only finally be understood by fiction, only finally be redeemed by the imagination. A novel is not, after all, a historical document, but a way to travel through the human heart. I would hope that through this fictionalized story, I will bring acquaintance of those famous sisters to the English-speaking readers. November 25th, the day of their murder, is observed in many Latin American countries as the International Day Against Violence Towards Women. Obviously, these sisters, who fought one tyrant, have served as models for women fighting against injustices of all kinds. To Dominicans separated by language from the world I have created, I hope this book deepens North Americans' understanding of the nightmare you endured and the heavy losses you suffered, of which this story tells only a few. Vivan las mariposas.